Um, Obviously tough weekend for us. Glad that we rebounded back on Sunday and played our brand of ball. I thought Arkansas is a really, really good team and Courtney has them playing well. Um, but it never stops, next stop. Now we're going over to Knoxville and going to play the number one team in Tennessee. And, I think for me, our biggest thing is just going out there and competing the way that we can compete and playing our clean softball, I would say. And then, getting good big pitches when we need to get big pitches. So overall, I felt like, we needed Sunday to kind of get back into our groove and excited to finish SEC play and playing against a really good team.
All right, Cease, if you got something.
Sure. Hey, Trisha, obviously last time you went on the road, it didn't go the way you wanted. You won two, but you didn't play that great at times. Like you said, you guys didn't play great for a couple games at home. So now how a short week, how do you go ahead and make sure the team that showed up Sunday shows up on Thursday in Knoxville? And how do you make that happen? What are some of your concerns?
Yeah, I think just practice, we're going to get really, I call it a day and a half of practice because when we get to Knoxville, it'll be a practice, but not really a practice. But it's just kind of addressing that. At this point in the year, we should be able to have conversations and emphasize it in practice. This is where your off-season work and your early in the year work really come into play. So our biggest thing is we got to get some rest, recovery in today, get that all situated. We're in the middle of finals, as most of y'all know. So making sure that academic piece is put away and taken care of correctly. And then for us, it's to really, just kind of go back to some of the basics. And so we will, in practice tomorrow, do some situational things defensively, making sure that we understand Tennessee and their lineup and, their speed and who has power, those types of things. And, part of it is we have to flush it as well, right? There's nothing we can do about last weekend except for learn from it. And I think, sitting down, I had a good talk with the team on Sunday prior to the game. I think, building on that and making sure that our heads are in a good space.
Thank you.
Coach, I saw you kind of tinkered around with the lineup on Sunday. Just trying to get something going, I assume. How do you feel like that went? And I know you didn't score a ton of runs yesterday, but just what can momentum kind of do a little bit for you headed into Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Coco has been our most versatile piece in that lineup. She can short game, she can hit for power. And so we've tinkered with that a couple of times this year, moving Amari, moving Coco. We moved Allie yesterday. So we're just trying to, I think as you go through the year, there's different times of the season in which certain players are seeing the ball well and certain players maybe you're looking for them to see, just kind of produce a different way, maybe put a bunt down, some hit and runs, those types of things for them to kind of free up. So I know we've been trying to figure out how to get Frankie in the game. Frankie, as we all know, has been, just tremendous to us and very instrumental and our little firecracker. And so her to get back into that game. I thought Mac did a tremendous job behind the plate. And so I think, just trying to tinker together, get a little bit more offense in our lineup. So when that happens, we're able to get Frankie in the lineup regularly. And so we'll see. We'll see what this weekend looks like. I think runs are going to be hard to get, and I think it's going to be important that we really make sure that we execute the short game and maybe put some pressure on Tennessee offensively, but you know what I mean, defensively for them. And we have to play clean defense.
Coach, what kind of an opportunity does this present? You have another number one team. Is it one of those things where you just want to be a top eight seed, or does obviously you want to win every game, but just does being as high a seed as possible does that matter?
I think it does. I think, and you know me, Tyler, well, I'm kind of psychotic, right? So I think these are all just really good reps for us to see where we're at right now, but also about the growth of this program and what we need to do in order to be a consistently top seed or top in the nation softball wise. I think we've done a really good job this year. We've put ourselves in a great spot and played, if not the hardest schedule, one of the hardest schedules, across the nation. And so for us, it is another game. It's another series. It's another really hard SEC series. But all of this is helping us just in our toolbox of like what this looks like, how to go on the road, how to compete at a really, really high level at the end of the year. I mean, there's just all these things that we can really take from it and help us as we enter into the next part. And we're definitely not looking over this weekend at all. But what I'm saying is you're going to have these experiences from this conference season to be able to like lean into once we get to the really hard two of postseason. So, I think our last 4 weekends of conference play has been really tough. And it's been like that for most of us in the SEC. There's really not an easy route through our conference. It's kind of through it. I always like the Bison, right? When they go through to the storm, right? They don't run away from it. And so that's what this conference really teaches you. And so those teams that are able to handle that and handle the mental, I would say like craziness that goes with that of like, man, another weekend or another pitch or another hit or not, like it's just all of that mental piece that I think really shows up this time of the year.
Trisha, I figure hits will be hard to come by. And when you look at the film, Woolley and Allie didn't have a great hitting weekend. So how do you get them confident when you know Pickens might be hard to get hits?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just keeping their heads in a good spot, going back to some drawing boards. I know Coach Harger talked to Coco and Allie quite a bit this weekend of just some things that he thinks that they could tweak a little bit. You notice Coco went a little bit more to her short game on Sunday. She always has that in her back pocket, so I think putting bunts down, moving runners, those types of things are going to be huge for us. The sacked fly is going to be huge. So I think really understanding how to help the team win and it not really being about your individual success, which I thought both of them did a great job this weekend of keeping their heads in a good spot, I think is going to be key.
Okay, one last thing, and then I'm going to ask questions. What about with a short week? Does the pitching coach, how does she go into this week knowing the tournament's right around the corner?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go after this series like anything else, just because next week will, depending on where we fall, I think most likely we could be anywhere between the 2 and the 4. I think if I did the percentages right, I'll have to ask Tyler to be honest with you, but I think we'll have, a couple days rest, so we'll have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday to rest. Not really rest, but not play. We'll practice, obviously. So I think this week it's, tomorrow we'll address some issues that I saw pitching wise from a mechanic standpoint. And then on Wednesday, when we get to Knoxville, it'll be an execution type of bullpen of making sure we understand how we're attacking their lineup. So I thought there were some moments of really good pitching, and then we just, obviously allowed some big hits in some very crucial situations that just can't happen. Like we have to be better pitchers, and I felt like we turned into a little bit of throwers in those situations. So, and then our defense didn't help us. I think that, Cease, because you were here all weekend, and so getting that, there's a mental piece to that too, though, of like when you're in these really tight games and something like that happens, which it happens for pitchers all the time. And that's what we talk about. Like you miss a pitch and they hit it out. It's the same thing what happens when your defense doesn't, makes an error. And so you have to have that mental fortitude to get through that and go to that next pitch. You really just got to stay, and you guys have heard me say this a lot, of like, be where your feet are. Like you can only control the next pitch.
Thanks.
Coach, kind of how much, I know you're not a huge goals person, as far as just specifics, but y'all are in a position now, where coming down the stretch, you're still in that top mix for the SEC and then just going into the postseason. I mean, do y'all talk about the potential of going further in the tournament than you have in the past, or the team collectively, like history wise? Do y'all have conversations about that and what you want to do specifically, or is it kind of just, let's go win ball games?
Yeah, we don't talk about it. I didn't even know that, to be honest with you, Donna. Like I'm terrible about it, to be honest with you. It's really like who are we playing against and how do we beat them? That's all I really care about. And I talked to the team about that though a lot of like I at the end of the year is when you can look back and be like, oh my gosh, we've done this or we did this or really for me it's who are we playing? Tennessee. How do we beat Tennessee? And then whatever, next week looks like for the conference tournament, like who are we playing and how do we beat them? I'm just not wired that way, I guess would be a best way to say it. So my teams are going to be that way. It's, I'm sure they talk, to be honest with you. I just don't listen to the talk and I don't listen, like we don't talk about it as a staff. It's really, who are we up against and how do we beat them?
Coach, good to talk to you there. I'm so fascinated as a coaching staff. How do you stay even keel in a league like this where you're going to have highs and lows? I don't care how good you are. Everybody has it because of the gauntlet that you're playing. And how do you prepare for the variety of styles that you have to face on a weekly basis? Because every team has their own personality, different style of play. And even next week, you're going to might play somebody you haven't played yet. Well,
Yeah.
just take me through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to balance it because I think if you go to your team and you're like, we're going to face this, and this, and it becomes too much. So we tend to talk about some general things of what we need to do and execute and hunt, but then we work on what works best for us. So if we take care of what we do and how we prepare and what we're really good at, and we concentrate on that, I think that's where we kind of keep our heads at because you're right. Every pitcher every team in the SEC has two kids throwing 70 miles an hour. They got an up baller, they got a down baller, they got a thumber that can throw lots of changeups. Like, how do you prepare for that? You don't. Like, that's the truth of it. You have to understand your adjustments when different arms come in the game. And your ability to make those adjustments quickly is what makes you successful. So obviously we came off of a tough weekend. Arkansas beat us, like straight up beat us. And we did not play well enough to win. And so Sunday, it was nice to see us bounce back and play our type of game. We played clean defense. I thought Lefty looked tremendous, her best game of the weekend. And, we obviously got two big hits, right? Frankie Vrazel and Mac. And so I think when you are looking at the SEC and you're looking at 1 through 10, it's a difference of not making one play or not making one pitch or getting the big hit. Like it's never this like whole combination of like all these different things. Like there's very little separating us. And I think you're going to see that in postseason play once that happens, of some SEC teams really coming out and doing what we've been doing all year long. And it's a grind. I think if you ask Patty and Mike, after going through this conference this year, which I feel like feels very different. And I've talked about that. I've been part of the pack. So is Whitey during some phenomenal pitching years, right? And players, and we've all been through that. This year feels different. I just straight up, maybe I'm older, who knows? But, and I think that, the teams that understand how to play the most like themselves consistently, no matter where they are the teams that do well. And so I think it's very easy in this conference to get really high. It's not really, really high, but get really flustered and stressed and just how hard it is. It's going to be those teams that understand how to deal with that stress and stay as much as their normal is and compete up in that space. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And
Yeah.
also, I feel like, and correct me, you tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like your team this year has more variety of ways to win games than maybe even last year. Where Sunday's an example where, the offense ain't going, but you're winning a low scoring game, but you've also won slugfest. Do you sense that difference this year between your team this year, maybe even last year, that this team can find different ways to win, which you have to in the SEC?
Yeah, it was something intentional. So Harger and I sit down after every year and we look at who ended up in Oklahoma City, right, for the last 5 years. So really the COVID year kind of Like there was a couple of years where I think things were a little wonky, but we look at what do they have? What does it look like? So from a pitching standpoint, offensive standpoint, because obviously from ASU, we slugged, we hit, right? That ballpark, you put a ball in the air and it's gone. Like I always say, like try being a pitching coach in the desert. It's not fun. You know what I mean? So, so you look at those things, and Missy Lombardi talks about this too. Like she'll sit down at the end of the year. And so then it's like from a pitcher standpoint, like, what does that look like? Like, do you need strikeout kids? Can you have pitch to contact? What does that lefty look like? How important is it? So like and it's not just stats, it's like watching a bunch of games, analyzing what's going on. And so when we sat down, there were some things that we thought from an athletic standpoint that I think that we needed to address. So that was very intentional in who was coming to us. And, you have to realize that this freshman class was like our first class that we kind of, I wouldn't say threw together, but it was like kind of a race, right? Because of where we were recruiting, we were kind of behind the 8 ball because what we needed at ASU isn't what we needed at Texas A&M. And so we got a bunch of kids that I think could help us, but they're more athletic, right? They're a little bit more versatile. I mean, Amari Harper has played, right field, second base, first base. Frankie Vrazel came to us as a shortstop. She's playing right field, so like that piece I think is really huge. And when you look at some of these teams that have been in the World Series, obviously they can hit and they can hit the long ball, but there are quite a few. There's usually 2 to 3 that they're not necessarily long ball hitters, but they figure out ways how to manufacture runs. And that means hitting doubles, hitting, you have to have some power piece, but it doesn't have to necessarily be the long ball. And so looking at how we could, if we don't have the bombers, the kids hitting home run, like how else can we get there? And that was something that I felt like we addressed a great deal in the portal.